Do you remember childhood mystery pictures? A bizarre weave of strokes, lines, and the challenge is find the boy. It's a fun game. How many such pictures we had to solve among the Stalingrad ruins, only it was impossible to lose in that game. For many days spent on Mamayev Kurgan, snipers did not rest neither day nor night. They lost initiative and ingenuity. We knew that under every hillock could hide danger, but we were gradually overcome by indifference. After all, if it takes a sniper a few seconds to fire a shot, in order to find the target, we have to watch the enemy's leading edge for hours. But what can a fatally tired man notice? Nothing, or simply put his head under a bullet, and there was an unconscious desire to evade the fight. That's why the regiment commander gave us a day's rest. Our section of defence was strengthened by Lieutenant Fedosov's group of fighters. The danger of complete encirclement had passed, and we could now get some sleep. But before we got into our bedrooms, niches under the bank of the ravine, we told and showed the newcomers how dangerous the trenches on Mamayev Kurgan were. For the newcomers, the mound probably seemed deserted. We slept the whole day. I was awakened by the banging of a kettle above my ear. Dinner. After buckwheat porridge with meat and hot tea, I was asleep again. The time given by the regiment commander for rest had not expired yet, and we dived into the recesses again. We woke up a few hours later when a mine burst in the ravine. Somewhere nearby a Nazi machine gun was firing. Tracer bullets, as in cotton wool, were sinking into the wall of the ravine overhanging us. I noticed it already near the periscope at the sniper station. I did not observe it for the sake of curiosity. It was necessary to detect the machine gun and shut its throat, if not now, in the dark, then at dawn. It could be detected by the glowing bullet trace, but the machine gun was quickly silenced. Voyashkin came to me and sat down beside me. In the ravine something rattled. Empty tin cans or wooks. Hitler's machine gun started talking again. "What target is he firing at?" I asked. "Who dropped the kettle?" "Hey, in the ravine a lot of wounded newcomers." "It's them near the infirmary rattling kettles," he answered Dvoyashkin. "Nothing for the wounded." I was indignant, and immediately decided to find the machine gunner and put a hole in his head. At dawn the battle boiled up, and I, having changed my position under this noise, finally found the hunter for scum. His head was immediately in the crosshairs of my sight. The machine gun went silent. After this shot I went down into the ravine, to the wounded newcomers that had arrived last night. It was very important to know where and under what circumstances they were wounded. I was especially interested in zero wounds. After all, each wound has its own peculiarity and can suggest which shooters appeared here the enemy. At the entrance to the sanitary dugout sat broad-shouldered, stocky soldier. His black eyes glittered with fear and joy, and somewhere in the depths of them there was that sharp soldier's joke with which soldiers even before death do not part. The soldier's mouth was covered with a wide bandage. The screw on his chin was soaked with blood and had turned brown. Next to the helmet lay some torn book without a cover, and between its pages was a stub of a simple pencil. On the soldier's big dirty hands, and on his overcoat there were traces of blood. He had been wounded yesterday morning. Stepan Safonov Fisher. It was written in his soldier's book. "How did it happen to you, Safonov, to put your head under a fascist bullet?" The soldier looked at me with a reproachful look. Apparently, he wanted to send me away, but I waited patiently for an answer. At last he took a pencil and wrote in nervous handwriting on a sheet of paper. "You've probably never smelled my teeth before. Would you like me to give it to you?" Please," I replied. "Just don't get annoyed and help me to establish where and how you were wounded. It's very important." Only from the third written sheet I learnt that Safonov had been wounded in the mouth when he was lighting a cigarette from a comrade. "Where's the soldier who gave you a light?" "My friend Chersin stayed at the front, waiting for his turn. He too will be shot soon," came the written reply. I blurted out angrily. "Wussies, we've been at altitude for a whole week, but we didn't put our heads to the fascists, and you waited out the night, and half of the team went out of action. How did it happen?" Safonov started to write something in reply, but I didn't read it anymore. I ran away to my position. I slipped along the trench to Sasha Gryazev's grave, then went down into the pit. Here you can stand at full height. It is necessary to think over how to act against the enemy's snipers. For sure they are on this site, but they work very carefully. Fascist snipers, as a rule, set up their posts in the depth of the defence, and we are getting to the very front. They have a lot of false positions, how to distinguish between false and real ones. A little experience had already told me you need observation and great endurance. For example, at dawn a lighter flickers somewhere, the sniper has lit a cigarette. Spot this point and wait. A web of tobacco smoke should appear. A little more time will pass, or maybe the whole day, and for a fraction of a second the helmet will appear. Don't yawn. But even if it is too late to take it, it is already clear where among the false positions the real one is. This reasoning with myself led me to the conclusion that today, more than ever, I should keep a close eye on the area from where Sasha Gryazev was shot in the chest. I crawled over to the position of my partner Podkopov and started watching. An hour and a second passes. My eyes ache from the strain. My neck is tired. It is hard to hold my head, but I do not move. There is no sniper's nest where I am looking. I checked 10 times. He crawls away. I cannot disbelieve my comrade, but some inner instinct and desire to avenge Sasha's death do not let me go from this position. An hour later again crawl up with a periscope, Morozov and Podkopov. Now the three of us are already looking round the same area. Above us fly heavy shells, 6-barrel German mortar. They explode in the depths of our defence, raising pillars of earth. Such giant shells are visible in the air. They fly with a squeak that resembles the voice of a donkey. They fly, flipping in the air from side to side like a piglet in the mud. We nicknamed the German 6-barrel mortar donkey also because it shouted 2 or 3 times a day. At dawn, at 5 o'clock, then at noon and with the onset of darkness. I guess the mortarman knew when our medics were taking the wounded to the Volga. We lay silently, keeping watch. The rays of the setting sun illuminated the height. They seemed to shoot through the dark spots, illuminating every hillock we noticed during the day. Just below the summit were shell casings. Out of idleness I counted 23 of them. Stop. This one has no bottom. Through such a shell casing, as through a pipe, you can see the distance. I stood up a little, and suddenly there, in the tube, as if a flint shot out a spark, I fell to the bottom of the trench. On the opposite side of the barrier burst a bursting zero. Nikolai Kulikov was already sitting beside me. "No, Chief, are you alive?" he asked. "As you can see, I'm rolling a cigar." "Have you been wounded again?" "Leave me alone with your silly questions. I'm safe and sound?" So why'd you jump like a leopard on its prey?" "We don't keep a good eye on the enemy's innovations." I answered and told you what happened. Hitler's sniper in payment for his labour and invention got the right for the first shot. Now the shot is for the Russian sniper. At dinner we decided how we would act. Nikolai Kulikov and Podkopov were in favour of going out to hunt for shell casings at night. Shaikin and Kostrikov disagreed, arguing that the sniper would leave this shell casing a false position. Morozov and Kuzmin suggested to wait for the general offensive, and then, under the noise, to cut on the casings. Snipers need a background to work. Morozov, philosophist. Volovatic and Dvoyashkin had no definite opinion. They were just ready to go to their old positions. "Let's take a little nap," Nudai suggested. My friends knew that I liked to take a nap from evening till midnight. I had not slept at morning dawn, so they silently let me into a dark corner. I woke up about 1 o'clock in the morning. Nikolai Kulikov was fiddling with his rifles. The others were asleep. The cold brought order in the trenches. The guys were lying close to each other. Nikolai, seeing that I was awake, took his rifle and dived into the darkness. I followed him, taking my automatic rifle and a bag with grenades. Probably before the storm. Probably the enemy is preparing a new blow to throw us into the Volga. It will not work, a retreat. There is no land for us beyond the Volga. Taking a position not far from my sleeping comrades, I began to listen to the silence and remember the meeting with the Army Commander General Vasily Ivanovich Chiwikov. It was on the morning of 16 October. Then, it seems, it was the same tense, but not very quiet night. And the commander, inviting us to his dugout to present us with awards, spoke somehow surprisingly calmly. Defending Stalingrad, we knit the enemy in hand and foot. From our ability to stand here to the death depends on the solution of many major tasks of the war, the decision of the fates of millions of Soviet people, our fathers, mothers, wives and children. But this does not mean that tomorrow we will show unreasonable bravery. It is tantamount to betrayal. From his hands, a medal of honor was placed in my palm. Our determination to fight here in the ruins of the city under the slogan "Not a step back" is dictated by the will of the people, continued the commander. The expanses beyond the Volga are great, but what eyes will we look at our people there? It seemed to me that he was asking me about this, knowing that I was born and grew up in the Urals. My relatives are there, my grandfather, father, mother, and how many acquaintances, comrades. No, I must not show up there with eyes full of shame and disgrace for the surrendered Stalingrad. And I answer, there's nowhere to retreat. There's no land beyond the Volga for us. For some reason, these words were very much liked by Vasily Ivanovich and Ivan Maximovich Vidyukov, the assistant to the head of Glavpor on Komsomol. Vidyukov grabbed my hand and shook it for a long time, saying, "That's right, that's Komsomol style." That same night, he visited my positions. It was a formidable night, but, as we know, the enemy failed to take us by surprise. How would the night end, and what would the morning be like? Would my plan fail? I should have called Viktor Medvedev here. Good guy Medvedev, movable, restless. He criticizes slow snipers with one phrase. They need a good ponukalo. Once recently he came to young snipers with a conversation about his experience of hunting fascists. He came and, without saying a word, unfolded before them a kitsit with makorka, red silk with embroideries. They said, "Look with what love and diligence an unknown girl embroidered this pouch." 2 empty cartridges fell out of the pouch. "That's all I wanted to say to you," they said. "Let's go to the positions. We'll understand each other better there." That's right, Vitya. The theory of sniping is best learnt in practice. And again I remembered the words of Vasily Ivanovich Chuikov. The sniper should not wait for the moment when the fascist himself sticks his head out. It is necessary to make him discover himself and give him without delay a proper portion of lead in the head. So I spent the long hours of the night alone with my thoughts. The silence was like a noose round my neck. But then a light thread broke in the east. I was going to wake up my comrades, and they were already crawling towards me, carrying breakfast and ammunition. Someone reported. Regimental scouts took the tongue. At 6 in the morning there will be an artillery raid on our front lines. It was porridge remained unopened. It was postponed for dinner. We didn't touch vodka. We ate some breadcrumbs and went to our points. Not far from my position I met Lieutenant Fedosov. He had arranged the soldiers and was also waiting for the attack to begin. "It's already past 6, he said, "and the fascists are silent." I called the commander. I said to him, "For some reason the fascists are not shooting at us in our section." There was laughter. "I'll report it to the military council," he said. Nikolai Kulikov was waiting for me at the position opposite the shell casings. Here we kept an artillery tube. What we saw, we were not surprised. 22 casings were lying in place, the 23rd without the bottom disappeared somewhere. Where to? The optics of the artillery tube is strong. You can see well at 300 meters. I began to go through bush after bush, ditch after ditch, advancing deep into the enemy's defences. I got to the very top, where sometimes the rangefinder appeared. Nearby there was a small hollow. Here it is, a shell casing without a bottom. It's camouflaged in the berm of the hollow. Through it you can see a Hitler in a helmet. He is observing with a telescopic sight of a sniper rifle. The casing covers the optics from side light, hides glare and helps to see the target more clearly. He even seemed to be taking pictures of his targets as he fired. "There you are," I whispered, as if the Nazi could hear my voice and get away. To bring my breathing back to normal, I handed the optical tube to Nikolai Kulikov and, taking my time, told him how to find the fascist sniper. I'm guiding him by well-visible landmarks. Yes, I see. Nikolai seems to be choking too. After taking a breath, he suggests, "Chief, we must take him now, otherwise he'll slip away." And then I hear a whisper behind me. "Wait, guys, let me see a live Hitler sniper." This is Lieutenant Fedosov. We didn't even notice how he got close to us. He didn't wait for the enemy attack, and now he doesn't know where to put himself. I've had the Nazi sniper in my sniper sights for half an hour. I'm a little tired, but tense to the limit. I chase the fatigue away from me, trying not to relax. He is also looking through the telescopic sight. I ask Kuliko, "Nikolai, do you think he can see us?" "Let's check." Nikolai stepped back. lifted the helmeted figure above the barrier. Instantly, the fascist sniper fired. The helmet was torn off the doll's head. Putting his hand on the bolt to pull it and pick up the shell after a successful shot, as is customary for snipers, the Nazi broke away from the telescopic sight. His head lifted up. At the same second, my shot rang out. The bullet landed somewhere between his eyes, turning his helmet over his face. The rifle with telescopic sight remained lying in the pipe. Lieutenant Fedosov sank to the bottom of the trench, then took my personal account, notebook, salivated pencil, and wrote in large letters, "I am an eyewitness of the duel. Vaited killed a fascist sniper before my eyes. So we took revenge on the murderer of Sasha Gryazev. From the same position, acting more decisively. In the following days, my pupil sniper Nikolai Kulikov cut down 2 rangefinders on the sides of Mamayev Kurgan. And the offensive, which we were waiting for that day, for some reason never took place. Perhaps because we learnt about it in advance from the testimony of a prisoner. The Germans, apparently, guessed about it and did not get into the way, became more cautious and when you cannot hurry. Mamayev Kurgan is the dominating height above the city. The southern shoulder of the mound is marked on the map with the number 102.0. From here you can clearly see the city centre, which is almost completely occupied by the enemy and all destroyed. Therefore it is easy to understand our desire to hold, if not on the top, then at least on the southern slopes of the height, and thus threaten the enemy with blows in the flank and rear. More favourable positions could not be found in the whole of Stalingrad. We literally saw through telescopic sights the backs of Hitler's heads, which were stuck in the centre of the city. But in order to begin active work on these heads, we had to first ensure the safety of their own heads from the rear, because above us, on top of the mound, periodically appeared machine gunners and experienced snipers of the enemy rangefinders, observers and correctors of artillery and mortar fire also nested there. So we had to continuously observe and fire in 2 opposite directions. However, in Stalingrad it is a common thing. Here it was often difficult to understand where was the front and where was the rear. Everything was mixed up. Having solved the trick of the fascist sniper with a shell casing, we turned our eyes to the opposite side, to the foot of the southern slopes of the mound, cut by ravines, in dense thickets of burdock, thistle, wormwood and elderberry. There are fewer of us here now. Viktor Medvedev and his partner are operating in the area of the meat-packing plant. Shaikin and Morozov moved to the ice storage area, Abzalov and Nasirov to the shooting gallery area. The snipers of my group chose a low, cramped dugout at the top of a shallow, winding ravine that led to the Tsaritsa River, to the centre of the city. Last night, I said to my comrades, at the bottom of the ravine we heard the clinking of cauldrons. There seems to be some kind of a pond there, and dense thickets of burdock. Yes, there are thickets there, confirmed Nikolai Kulikov. What do you think? After the exchange of opinions, we decided to keep round-the-clock observation of this place from both sides. Night came. High in the sky, every now and then flashed lanterns of flares, pulling out of the darkness of individual objects. Shaikin and Uboshenko went along the eastern bank of the ravine, I with Nikolai Kulikov on the western bank. We climbed to the very precipice in front of the bushes at the bottom of the deep funnel. Below us, in 100 metres, fascist dugout. A machine gun is mounted on it, we know that. On the edge of the funnel lay 2 dead soldiers, big, in Italian uniform. We saw them in the flash of the rocket. They pick up their Aryans, and they threw these ones to the crows, whispered Nikolai. There are no crows here for a long time, so these conquerors will be our bodyguards. Sitting idly at the bottom of the funnel and counting how many bullets burst. A boring occupation. We need to act to equip the cells. And we, like moles, began to pick the earth from the edge of the funnel and push it under ourselves. Every hour our funnel became shallower and shallower, and we climbed higher and higher. I wanted to smoke, but bear with it. Cossack fatigue was making itself felt more and more. My back was aching from hard work in an uncomfortable position, but it was coming to the end. My hole was a success. Now I could sit, rest, watch and shoot. On the right, Nikolai's position was not so convenient, but he did not complain, already prepared to observe. It was beginning to get light. I wonder how our comrades are doing on the other side of the ravine. A plain soldier with a bucket in his hand and an automatic rifle on his neck came to the platform in front of the thicket. He stopped, turned his head, waiting for someone. That's how it happens in war. People don't know that their lives hang in the balance. The soldier's face is in the crosshairs of my sniper. I can see his lips moving, white teeth, straight, slightly hunched nose, pale, clean-shaven face. 2 more soldiers appeared, also with buckets, and immediately disappeared into the thicket. 5 minutes passed. The soldiers with buckets slowly ascend the steps. The water ripples, but it does not splash over the edge. They value the water, apparently. It is expensive for them. Kulikov hisses at me like an angry goose. I don't kill fascists myself, and I don't allow him to. Strong is the warrior who knows how to defeat himself, I whispered to him. I firmly decided not to open fire this day. It is necessary to find out whether there are fascist officers on this site, of what rank, to determine the approaches to the spring in the thickets. My nerves were stretched to the limit. I decided to have a little rest, to smoke. I went down to the bottom of the trench and only smoked a cigar as Kulikov called me. No, you just look what the bastards are doing. I put aside my cigar and took an artillery pipe. Yes, the picture is interesting. One might say tempting. On the very platform where an hour ago a soldier with a bucket stood, as at an exhibition, the officers are now washing themselves. They are stripped to the waist. A soldier pours water on their backs from an aluminium mug. 3 caps with officers' cockades are lying next to them. Look at them, Chief, how happy they are on our land. Kulikov did not stop. Now they behave freely, while we, the masters, are dirty, bent like penknives, lying among the corpses, smelling the stench. Let's cheer them up. Let's see how they laugh after our music. Don't touch them. Let them live another day. We're giving them life in installments. And keep quiet, talking interferes with business. Nikolai took offense again. An indecisive soldier will only recognize himself at a dance. We bickered for a short time. We gave ourselves a rest, and then fell silent again. At a height of 102.0 began a firefight. Behind the water tanks we heard the rumble of tank engines. Now I could see well where the fascists were going. From the platform they go down into the trench and disappear under the bank of the ravine, in dugouts. There they are not afraid of neither bombing nor shelling. They turned this part of the ravine bank into a fortress. The approaches to the underground shelters are covered by a bazooka with 2 machine guns. The embrasures of the bows are covered with steel plates. Dugouts and bazooka are connected with each other by a trench, on which soldiers often run. It is midday. Thirst, corpse odour. Leaving their own, we did not expect to linger, and a machine gun is working. We can see it well. Bullets darted over our heads. It's a very tempting moment. We set our sights at 300 meters and fired at the same time. The machine gunner kept going, as if we were shooting at him with blank cartridges. The fighting in our section stopped as suddenly as it had started. Nikolai and I sat in silence. Our conscience gnawed at us for our blunder. Different thoughts came into my head. I had lost my visual acuity, my optics had deteriorated, my breathing was disturbed, I had become twitchy, I had learnt to press the trigger smoothly. I look at Kulikov. He dropped his head on the edge of his helmet, sniffling. He's also figuring out the reason for the miss. All right, Kolya, sleep a little. I tell him to calm down, but I scold myself with all my might. We were shooting from the top downwards, and in such cases the distance is always hidden. Here you can't trust your eyesight at first sight. You have to add at least 1/8 to the usual sum of meters. And one more thing, from the endless fire from all kinds of weapons, the air is heated and fluctuates. You get a visual mirage. It sometimes deceptively brings the target closer to the eyes. It is also necessary to give correction or to make shooting, at least on false targets. In the ravine again earned the Nazi machine gun. Kulikov nestled into the telescopic sight of his sniper. I have a sight of 350. You move it to 400, I suggested. Aimed again, hit together. The machine gun fell silent. Nikolai killed the machine gunner. My bullet did not reach him. Dusk came, and Nicholas and I went to the assembly point. Here life went on as usual. Snipers reported on their successes. Each killed fascist. A whole story. Rim Vasilchenko took the trophies. In his hands he held a piece of plywood and a piece of thick carpenter's pencil. I, as a former brigadier of a tractor brigade, have the accounting organized on 5, he said, putting against each surname numbers 1, 2, 3. O'Krim put 0 against mine. I see that you, Comrade Chief Petty Officer, are in bad order. If you keep working like that, you'll end up on the blackboard. A soldier from the 3rd Battalion brought dinner. He put a duffel bag full of cartridges and grenades next to the thermos and hurriedly ran away from us. Shortly before dawn, the sniper's dugout was empty again. According to the plan I had outlined, everyone went to their firing points. This day I decided to block the fascist bunker and the officers' platform by the forces of 3 sniper pairs. I chose a new position for myself and Kulikov, not far from yesterday's position. In my hands, periscope. But from the new position the bunker is not visible. I leave my helmet in place and crawl a little to the side. There it is, the entrance to the dugout. From there a red head in an officer's cap stuck out and immediately hid. I informed the guys about it. All 3 of our couples were positioned so that they could talk to each other. They rejoiced, froze in anticipation of the target. Near the dugout, in the trench, the cap appeared. The edge of the fascist emblem is visible. The cap gradually rises. The whole emblem up to the visor is already visible. Do you see it? I asked Kulikov. I see. Yes, it's a fascist sniper in ambush. Came up with a cheap bait. The cap is hidden. Too long, said Kulikov. Why did the sniper appear in our area? I asked. Nikolai shrugged his shoulders. And the hell he knows. Apparently he decided to die before the deadline. That's all right. But you cut down a machine gunner yesterday. Where did you hit him? In the head, Nikolai answered. With that you threw down the gauntlet to their snipers. They accepted your challenge. They recognized you by the accuracy of the hit. They need a puppet that looks like you. The dim sun was slightly warming my shoulders. A faint breeze was pleasantly refreshing my face. The last tender days of the passing autumn. It was time for lunch. A bent soldier was making his way to the dugout. He did not have any weapons, only one kettle hanging in his hand. We exchanged impressions and decided not to touch the soldier, let him live. He looked very shabby and pathetic. In minutes or a little more passed, and then from behind the corner of the trench appeared a big, lanky fascist officer. A Hitler sniper was following him with a rifle with a telescopic sight on his shoulder. Behind the sniper, from behind the turn of the same shallow trench, came out 2 more officers. One after another 4 shots rang out, and all 4 Hitlerites lay down like underfoot. Thrown Kulikov glove remained unlifted. We sent the opponent to the cross battalion. Time passed, no one appeared near the dead. We were bored. And suddenly a massive fire of artillery and mortars fell on our section. We climbed into our dugouts, sat and counted how many shells and mines burst nearby. When a mine approaches the ground, its tail whistles so that it feels as if your guts are being pulled out of your stomach. You think, that must be mine, and then it hit another trench. 9 dive bombers showed up. We must have hit an important bird if we called the Air Force. One of the bombs hit our trench. The blast wave shattered the trench. Vasilchenko and I went deaf. Kulikov and Morozov were only slightly frightened. For more than 2 hours aviation, artillery and mortars pounded our area. When everything quieted down, came indignant Lieutenant Fedosov. What is this, fascists? As if off the chain. What have you done here? The enemy battery near the railway tunnel suffered from bombing and shelling. The wooden shields that hid the guns from our eyes were blown away. The guns stood stripped. Calculations were swarming near them. The officers came out of their hiding places. Now it's time for us to work. The snipers were literally killing the gun crews. The first shots killed the officers. The soldiers working near them were stunned, not understanding what was the matter. Gambling Dvoyashkin, followed by Shakin, clanked their bolts. A couple more fascists pushed their noses into the ground. Only now they realized what the matter was. The surviving gunners and loaders dived into cover. Now for several days they will not appear near the guns in daylight hours, and at night, as you know, from guns you can shoot only darkness. We neutralized them thoroughly. In the evening, summing up the day, I asked, now it's clear why we couldn't hurry yesterday. Merbatea, Chief, a new plan, replied Nikolai Kulikov. Soldier's sky above the fighting positions always seems to be a sheepskin. There is always something missing, either food or ammunition or no conditions for rest. But there is plenty of danger. Simply keep your eyes open. Otherwise you will die. And if bad weather starts, consider that a hole in the sky has opened just above your head and everything in the world that is wet, slushy, cold, is meant for you to freeze to the bone. And then you seem to yourself a huge, unstoppable giant. But this same feeling in battle has another, precious, in my opinion, side. Without it, there can't be a combat-ready soldier. I'll try to explain it by personal feelings. There is a battle going on, and it seems to you that all bullets, mines, shells, and even bombs are aimed at you. So there is no more important target for the enemy than, and if that is so, then do not be a simpleton. Do not expose yourself to a stupid bullet and a blind shrapnel. You have a head. Ask the enemy more riddles. Turn from a giant, over which the sky with a sheepskin, into an invulnerable, invisible small target. The feeling of a giant should not leave you, because if there, where you act, directed all the fire of the enemy, then it is the most important area. Under you, under your chest, the very point that can be called the center of the front or even the center of the earth, no one can dissuade you of that. Thine giant, because you have covered the center of the earth with yourself. Invulnerable, because neither bullets, nor shrapnel, nor hellfire have broken you. During the defensive battles in Stalingrad, there was no such day that there was a lull all along the front. And when I speak here about silence or some pauses, of course I am talking only about those areas where I had to act. For example, on the southern slopes of Mamiev Kurgan. And again, these remarks about silence come from the soldier's notion of the importance of his frontier. We had silence, and it seems that everywhere, all along the front, the enemy had fallen silent. In fact, the Stalingrad land did not stop humming and groaning from the blows of aviation and artillery neither day nor night. Attacks were replaced by counterattacks. Separate explosions grew into a continuous rumble in the area of the factory Krasny Oktyabr, then on the approaches to the walls of the factory barricade, then in the city centre. But we had already got used to this continuous rumble of battle and noticed changes in the tension of the fighting only at ourselves, on the slopes of the mound and at the nearest neighbours on the right and left. Today, after we had successfully pierced several officers' heads near the dugouts in the ravine and at the anti-tank battery, we had a lull, but it was only relatives. The enemy machine guns, without ceasing, were hitting the bunkers of our trenches, firing along the ravine. Individual bullets bit into the roof of the dugout, where we were going to rest. It began to rain before daylight. Small craters were filling up with water. Kettles, buckets, thermoses stood under the rain. Orim Vasilchenko was preparing a sauna, of course, without a steam room. We just stretched a tent coat over the trench and began to eat of a flannel, a piece of a soldier's overcoat. We were joking, dreaming of a birch broom. Having washed with cold water, they ran naked into the dugout, twisted and wrung out the laundry which seemed to have been washed. It was dirty, but no one had saved any other for us. The dugouts were filled with grenades and cartridges. A dugout for a soldier is a kitchen, a bedroom and a bath. Today, Captain Aksanov, the assistant to the Chief of Staff of the division, looked into our palace for the second time. But the assignment of the division commander, he is studying the experience of group sniper work on the front line. I guess he liked our group. I've been, he says, to my neighbours on the right and left, and I'm drawn to you again. On such a rainy, dank night we could sleep safely, knowing that the fascists would not go on the offensive, although their artillery and mortars were methodically shelling our positions. The walls of the dugout were shaking, but we sat quietly. "Do you have any extra breadcrumbs?" timidly asked Captain Aksanov. Not a crumb in my mouth since morning. Orin Vasilchenko, who was on duty in the cubicle, as we jokingly called our dugout, sadly waved his hands. "We are waiting for dinner for the second day." Captain Aksanov moved to the lamp, and under its weak light unfolded his notebook to write down our information and impressions for the past day. I went out to the sniper on duty. It was still raining, and it was pitch black. Over the ravine soared flare lantern. It was suspended on a parachute mortars of the enemy, swaying. The fire settles so slowly that it seems to hang until morning. On the other side of the ravine, under the rays of the lantern, froze two human figures. I called out, "Who is there?" There was no answer. Voyashkin jumped out of the dugout. I recognized him. The duty officer shouted, rushed into the dugout, grabbed his automatic rifle, and waded knee-deep in water to the other side of the ravine. Orim Vasilchenko went the same way, and Captain Aksanov called me to him. A few more minutes passed. At the entrance to the dugout, a match flared up. Then the tent was thrown aside, and under the ringing of a tin bucket with contrived importance Okrim entered, followed by Dvoyashkin. They brought the long-awaited guests, a Kamit Habibilin, our ammunition and food carrier, and the political officer Stefan Kryakov. Kryakov greeted everyone by the hand, took off from his back a full duffel bag, moved it to Akmate and said, take it apart. This time they brought us more food than we expected. Among the tin cans of the second front, there were osmusks of mukhorka and half a grain. Orim Vasilchenko was merrily rattling the cauldrons. Then everyone fell silent, sniffing and sniffing. No one complained of lack of appetite, and the porridge was very tasty. Even Captain Aksenov was saying, "Good porridge, good." Everyone knew that Krykov, as always, brought news about the situation in Stalingrad, fresh newspapers and letters. We were not mistaken. Hardly had the duty officer had time to collect the kettles when the political officer put his hand behind his groove, and a bundle of letters lay in front of the lamp. In an instant they were dispersed. The dugout became quiet. Each silently holding his breath, read the news from home. Only one Ohrim Vasilchenko didn't know where to hide himself among our short soldiers' happiness. He didn't wait for letters. His relatives were in occupation, in Poltava region. It was hard to look at him at such moments, if only to refuse letters or put off reading until he left the dugout. But how could one refrain when news came from home? Stepan Kryakov, who knew about Okrimov's grief, took this into account. Suddenly he solemnly raised another envelope above his head and said, "I have a letter from a girl from Chelyabinsk. She asks me to hand the letter to the bravest soldier. Who do you want me to hand it to?" We, of course, without hesitation, answers, "Okrim." "Of course, Vasilchenko." Him. So Ohrim Vasilchenko received his first letter in a year and a half of war. He received it and was afraid to read it, didn't know what to do with it. Finally, he tore the envelope. I sat down next to Ohrim, saw the lines written in a straight, clear girl's handwriting. On the sheet was written, "I do not know who will read my letter, for I am writing to an unknown soldier. I am 17 years old. If by age I am suitable for you as a daughter, I can call you father, and if you are a little older than me, I will call you brother. From girls and women of our workshop collected gifts for the defenders of Stalingrad. We know that it is hard and dangerous in your trenches. Our hearts go out to you. We work and live only for you. Although I am far away, in the Urals, I live in hope that I will come back to my native Minsk. Do you hear my mother's cries?" Vasilchenko turned the page. I had time to read the end of the letter. "Kill the fascist, let there be mourning in his homeland, let his relatives shed tears. Beat the enemy courageously the way our ancestors beat them." Ohrim put the letter aside, stood up. He was short of air. He went out of the dugout. In a minute he returned, grabbed a machine gun, a bag of grenades. Clearly he's up to something bad. I stood at the exit, spread my legs wide like a sailor. Vasilchenko understood my posture. "You can't get through here." He stepped from foot to foot, then sat down on the edge of the bunk and, as if justifying himself, decided to reveal his daring plan. It turns out that Vasilchenko and Kostrikov secretly, from everyone for several days in a row, conducted surveillance of the enemy dugout, which is attached to the slope of the mound on our left. They studied the approaches to it, established the place of sentry duty, the time of changing of sentries. They waited only for a good moment, a heavy rain or a snowstorm, and such a moment came. Kostrikov had already slipped out of the dugout unnoticed. I shouted to the duty officer, "Immediately detain and return Kostrikov." This finally knocked Vasilchenko off balance. He threw the machine gun and the bag with grenades in the corner, shouted, calling us traitors. Captain Aksenov and political officer Kryakov came up. "Stop, Stalingrad soldier, why are you singing with a rooster?" shouted at Vasilchenko one of them. Large drops of sweat appeared on Okrim's face. His eyes blurred, his mouth twisted. Only now it became clear to us that he was having a nervous attack. He collapsed into my arms. He was shaking, banging his head against my chest. At last Ohrim calmed down and fell asleep immediately. Now we thoroughly listened to Kostrikov. The plan of the sortie deserved attention. He approved even Captain Aksenov, and the rain did not stop. We should not miss such a moment. Whether there will still be such rain, On that section before Kostrikov and Vasilchenko acted sniper pair, Afinogenov and Shchebina. We need to find out what they say. Afinogenov was awakened. He jumped up instantly, as if he was just waiting to be touched on the leg. Let's go. I know every way in this neighborhood. Oh, I'll give him a good thrashing. Wait, listen to the end. I heard everything you said. In Stalingrad, I learnt to sleep and hear the whole conversation. We armed ourselves only with light weapons, machine guns, grenades, knives. The first crawled Afinogenov, followed by Shchebina, then Stepan Kryakov and me. We were afraid of one thing, as if on the way to the dugout not to run into a mine. However, everything turned out safely. It seems that this time we were accompanied by soldiers' luck. Here is the dugout. Near the entrance under a lady's umbrella with a machine gun around his neck is a sentry. Afinogenov, not thinking long, crawled into the trench. A knife gleamed in the darkness, and the sentry collapsed to the ground without a sound. Afinogenov and Shchebina stayed upstairs, and Kryakov and I slowly entered the dugout. I took a quick look at the situation. Nails were hammered into the wooden wall near the door. On each nail is a machine gun. Under the machine guns are helmets. Near the helmets, electric torches. Along the right and left walls there are solid bunks. Hitlerites sleep on the bunks under blankets. They sleep quietly, peacefully. Over the head of each of them, the upper uniform. In the middle of the dugout hangs a small electric lamp, which makes the dugout half-dark, soothing, milky light. We went to the automatic rifles, took them off the wall, then turned the bulb, hooked to their belts but a pocket torch. The Nazis continued to snore. Stepan Kryakov loudly, firmly command. For the death of children and mothers on fascist beasts, ire. From 2 automatic rifles whipped a downpour of lead. The fascists jumped from their seats, but immediately fell. The blankets were mixed up in a heap. We stood against the wall, covered with machine guns, changing positions as necessary. We fired bursts into the bunks from side to side, no sign of resistance. Suddenly I see a Hitlerite alive at my feet. He is in one underwear, on which there is not a single dark spot. It means that not a single bullet has not touched him. How he managed to do it, I don't understand. I move the machine gun to my feet. Kryakov grabs my arm. Don't touch me. I need a tongue. Luttis and the fascist stretched out his hands along the floor. I surrender. I raise my hands even when lying. This German knew Russian well, which saved him. He understood the meaning of Kryakov's command before anyone else and threw himself at my feet. The German turned out to be obedient. He quickly threw on a camouflage coat over his underwear, put his feet into boots, and we returned to our comrades with the language. The way back was quick. At his dugout we were met by Captain Aksantov, Sonov, and the sleepy Vasilchenko, and Kostrikov and Kabibulin. Examining the German from all sides, they asked about the details of the sortie, but the story clearly did not stick. In front of my eyes time and again rose a picture of what we did in the dugout. On the soul was somehow not good. Even kind of pity became those. But looking into the eyes of Orim Vasilchenko, whose pupils have not yet extinguished yesterday's longing, dark and disturbing, like the sky above the fighting positions of the soldier, I concluded my thoughts aloud. Let the soldier's sky be sheepskin, but in our own land we are masters. The constant concern of a soldier is to survive and defeat the enemy. After all, the dead are in the ranks only at roll call, and the living are fighting. But I cared about one more thing, training and teaching newcomers the art of sniping. All living things struggle to continue to live. And I too wanted to live long, if not physically, then morally. I believed that every sniper I trained would be able to avenge me, protect others from premature death, and thus morally prolong my life, bring the common cause closer to a happy ending. That is why everything that was connected with the sniper's art completely took possession of my thoughts and actions. On the first day of our work on a new site, in the area of the factory Red October, my attention was attracted by a sniper newcomer Gorozhev, a medium-height, blue-eyed soldier. His facial features were large, his neck was short, and his chin was heavy. He seemed sullen, unsociable, withdrawn. There were reasons for that. Gorozhev sat for long hours with his partner on the front line, and there was no luck. Moreover, today a fascist sniper sent a bullet into him, and only thanks to the inaccuracy of the shot the newcomer remained alive. The bullet hit his helmet. but it was already a serious warning to the young snark. Look, before it's too late, change your tactics or leave the sniper team altogether. I sat down to Goroshayev, silently unfolded a kit set in front of him, tore off a wedge of paper from the newspaper, rolled a cigar. He did the same. They got high. Through the tobacco smoke, it seemed easier for him to look at me. The look of his blue eyes lost their sullenness, and he confessed. I can't get sniping. I look through the trench periscope all day long. Even stars appear in my eyes, but I can't catch the target. It's easier to hit with a machine gun. You give a command and shoot, but here it's just a hassle. I corrected Goroshayev and corrected him. Let it be so. He reluctantly agreed. Here I, without hurrying, explained that the sniper must identify the target at a glance, instantly assess it, and hit it with the first shot. And at the end of the conversation, I suggest, Mo, tomorrow morning I invite you to partner with me. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the snipers had finished their breakfast and started to go to their stations. I had to go with Goroshayev to the position opposite the railway carriages. There the enemy snipers were camouflaged and were taking out our soldiers and commanders. But first I took my partner to the dugout of the Deputy Battalion Commander, Senior Lieutenant Arkhip Sukharev, who was wounded on that very spot. We entered the dugout. Sukharev was lying on earthen bunks covered with black cloth. Nurse Klava Svintsova was preparing him for bandaging. Dora Shuknovich was helping her, holding in her hand a vial with some medicine. The senior lieutenant sat down, lowered his legs. There were drops of blood on his lips, his face was pale. His gaze stopped on me. Much was in that look, including undeserved reproach to our address. Say, how is it that you, snipers, did not exterminate in time that shooter who sent his bullet in the back of the deputy commander? Did not explain myself, did not justify myself. It was important to me that Goroshayev noticed that look. And he noticed, felt, appreciated what a sniper is in the eyes of the commander. After standing silently near Arkhip Sukharev, we left the dugout. In the factory district there was a fierce battle. Machine guns were firing in different parts. Where is the sniper? How can you find him in this machine gun noise? By what signs can you determine where his nest is? Goroshayev shrugged his shoulders and quietly replied, and the devil knows. The devils are sick here too. They don't know anything. We need to find an eyewitness to tell us where and how Sukharev was wounded. Soon we managed to meet a soldier who told us the following. The senior lieutenant, together with Parametic Zykov, went from the tool shop to the boiler room to the machine gunners of the 2nd Battalion. In the doorway, the senior lieutenant swayed, blood spurted from his mouth. I ran up to him. I wanted to help him. I just bent down, my left shoulder was burnt. We hid behind the boiler. There Zykov bandaged us. How many soldiers and officers were injured in that doorway? I asked. No, today 3 soldiers, and here is a senior lieutenant, replied the soldier. It became clear to me that the entrance to the boiler room was being held at gunpoint by some evil, experienced sniper. Now we must take a position where our comrades are dying. I said to Goroshayev. We sneaked into the boiler room. I set my periscope on the sill of a broken window. My partner did the same. He works under strong cover of machine gunners. My periscope was hit by a burst of machine gun fire, then another. It's a fascist sniper disguising his shots with the help of machine gunners. But where is he? We've been sitting for 3 hours now, and all to no avail. Goroshayev is already grumbling, saying that there is no sniper post in front of us. I keep silent, let him see for himself that he's wrong. And the right fascist machine gunners attacked the meat-packing plant. The fight has spread to the depth of the defence. We're still lying in ambush. We look directly against us. A Hitler's machine gunner jumped out from under the wagon wheels. Followed by a 2nd, 3rd, a 10th. They rolled under the slope of the embankment and were lost behind the ruins. Where are they going? And suddenly machine gun bursts crackled almost next to us. Several enemy soldiers rushed to the doorway, to the window where we were sitting. Goroshev's face tensed up, the blueness in his eyes was gone. He started throwing grenades with excitement. I was pouring fire from my automatic rifle, and the Germans, having lost several machine gunners at the boiler room walls, rolled back. Again a lull. Goroshev and I continued to track the snipers. The battlefield again seemed deserted. Killed machine gunners, like undercut weeds, lay with their heads in different directions. Someone was shouting, calling for help for their own, but no one responded. Nobody needed them now, except for us as a bait. but I did not have a hand in sniping at the orderlies. And then in the boiler room appeared Captain Vasily Rakitayansky, instructor of the political department of the division, an experienced political officer. He lay down at the hole in the wall, inserted a mouthpiece into the hole. I asked him to listen to me and then to start his broadcasting. The captain approved of my idea and agreed to help us. An anti-fascist speech in German should drive the sniper out of patience. He would forget about caution. But we miscalculated. The machine gunners responded to Captain Rakitayansky's voice. They opened frantic fire on the mouthpiece. We responded with aimed shots. 6 were sent to the Cross Battalion, but the German sniper never found himself. Then the bombardment began. Bombs fell on ruined walls, broken machines, on piles of broken bricks. We hid in the shaft under the boiler. Where Rakishinsky is, there's bombing, said one of my friends. Or maybe the other way, Ray Racing. Where there is bombing, there is Rakishinsky, replied the captain. The air raid was over, and we took our positions again. Rakitiansky stretched out his hand to the mouthpiece and began to pull it out of the bricks. The fascist sniper was waiting for this moment. His bullet pierced the captain's hand above the wrist. But he finally revealed his position. I had time to notice this. The fascist had made his nest under the wagon, between the slopes of the wheels. Now it was necessary to give Gorozhayev a chance to prepare for a precise shot. I advised him to choose a place in the back of the shop, and I stayed near the mouthpiece to divert the sniper's attention to myself. The Boloshayev was in a hurry. The bullet flew through the hole in the wheel, hit the rail and went away. Goroshayev's shot did not harm the fascist sniper. On the contrary, it served as a warning. We stayed the night in the boiler room. At dawn, the company commander, Vasily Bolshapov, came down to the boiler furnace. He brought us half a pot of water and said, "Here is water for you. Wash yourselves, rinse your clear eyes, so to speak, bring them to sharpness, and get on with it." Having washed up, we went to our firing positions again. I took the observation post, and Gorozhayev stood on the number. What should we do to make the fascist show himself? I asked Gorozhayev. He replied, "I don't know." Then watch. Captain Rakitiansky's mouthpiece was lying in its old place. I slipped my hand between the bricks, grasped the edge of the mouthpiece, and began to turn it. My shot rang out. The bullet flew over my ear. Yes, the Nazi sniper had arrived at the firing position before us. He had prepared for the meeting. 2 more shots rang out, one after the other. The Nazi shoots well and fast. He pinned me between the bricks near the mouthpiece. Just a little bit I move. Immediately a bursting bullet bursts near my head. An hour goes by, another hour. I pretend I'm a corpse. I can talk, but I can't move my head or arm. I squinted my eyes towards the sun, and its rays blinded me. I squeezed my eyes shut, and then an idea struck me. To blind the fascist with a sunbeam. I called Gorozhayev closer, and without moving, take a shard of mirror and direct the bunny in his eyes. Gorozhayev did everything exactly. It worked. My bullet jumped out of my trap and immediately slipped in its place model. From the looks of it, the changes on our side did not happen. Fascist sniper went down, hid from the sunlight. The hole in the wheel was viewed through. We started to find another position from which we could see at least the fascist's head. He calmed down, knowing that one Russian sniper was already lying dead near the mouthpiece. And we were walking around, picking up a position. 30 meters to the east of the boiler house there was a big tar tank, and on top of it there was a platform for a hoist. One could climb up to it by an iron ladder. We climbed up, dived down. The tar was thick and viscous. We took one board off the platform, threw it under our feet. There are several holes in the tank wall. We choose the most inconspicuous ones. Now we were above the embankment. From here the enemy trenches are clearly visible. But the sniper's post is covered by the wagon wheels. Nothing will wait. 30 minutes passed, and the sniper got out from under the wheel. He hung his rifle on his shoulder and walked along the trench. He met one of his own men, stopped, took the rifle off his shoulder. "Don't hurry," I said to Gorozhayev. "Let him talk a little for the last time. Tell him how he cut at the Russian sniper's mouthpiece." "I see," replied Gorozhayev. "Now memorize his face," I continued. "Catch the moment when he turns his forehead to you." "I see. I have him in my sights." "Good," I approved. and at the same second I noticed that the fascist prepared to raise his rifle to his shoulder. The butt was already off the ground. Shoot. Came out of my mouth like an exhalation. The shot rang out. The Nazi sniper, like a cut sunflower, fell on his back. His rifle fell across the trench and blocked the path of the second Nazi, on whose chest I noticed some kind of order. My bullet pierced his forehead. We left the ambush very late, satisfied. Well, there was something to be happy about. Gorozhiev had killed a fascist, avenged the death of his friends. And I was glad that I had helped him, passed on my knowledge and thus, as it were, prolonged my life and my work. A prisoner was taken in front of the front edge of our defence area. The commander of the mortar battery, Captain Krasnov, distinguished himself in this case. Every sniper in his own way envied the mortars. We were ashamed to look each other in the eyes. Orim Vasilchenko shame snipers tried to drown in tobacco smoke. The battalion's Komsomol commissar came to us, and a Komsomol meeting imperceptibly arose. I was the first to take the floor. That's what I was talking at. How did it happen that the fascist Efreator was caught not snipers, that day and night without a way out or on the front line of defence? Know every pebble, bush. Why did we miss the very fact that the mortars went behind the front edge of our section? I reproached my comrades for loss of vigilance, for indiscretion. If the sniper does not rely on the soldiers as the main masters of the situation, breaks away from them and acts on its own, locked like a snail in its shell, such a sniper awaits a continuous failure. The guys got to talking, hurt them alive my performance. Komsomolets Kostrikov said that he killed only 26 fascists and Sidorov 70, but to be equal to such a champion should not be. And you do not spin, why? They shouted from their seats. Why should I spin? Kostrikov snapped at him. Let Sidorov himself stand up and tell the story, and if he lies and sways like a creeper in the river, then I'll correct him. Sidorov stood up and calmly looked round at those present. He had an imposing appearance. Large facial features, a large nose with a hunch, a large chin, strong-willed, light blonde hair slicked back, broad chest, steep shoulders. Before he began his speech, he took out a pouch from his pocket and began to twist a goat's leg. Why don't you say anything? If you're up, speak up, said someone. Can't you see? I'm rolling a cigar and getting my thoughts together. But I don't know how to roll a cigar and speak. Letting out a jet of smoke, Sidorov looked at Kostrikov, shook his head and in one breath blurted out, Did you hear that this chicken does not want to take an example from me? Am I asking you to take an example from me? He's just crossed the threshold of war and like a cricket in the house, he's getting bored. If you whistle at me, I'll tear your ears off and you'll do as I say. I'm asking Sidorov. What did you get out of it? Oh, let him tell it himself since he started it. I'm older than him, I can correct him. Komsomol meetings seemed to go away, but curiosity pestered everyone. I wanted to know what happened between Kostrikov and Sidorov. Kostrikov came up. While Sidorov was increasing his personal score, the fascist machine gunners seriously wounded 4 of our soldiers. Whether they will stay alive or not is still a question. Sidorov personal considers above the lives of his comrades. There's no war without casualties. What's that got to do with me? Sidorov justifies himself. From those machine guns that were against me, the fascists almost never fired. They were like bait on the barrier. They didn't have time to adjust to the machine gun as I put a hole in my helmet together with my head. No matter how Sidorov justified himself, we reprimanded him. That same night I went with him to his station. We camouflaged ourselves on the platform of the gutter cleft of the Dolgy Gully and began to observe in the direction of Hitler's bunker. The machine gun from the Nazi bunker was beating off an even shot. Tracer bullets were fanning the darkness on a white front. Why didn't you say there was a night machine gun? I asked Sidorov. The bullets of this machine gun will not hurt us. He answered. Ah, that's how you think. I resented you. Tomorrow ask for a transfer to another unit. At night I brought an armor-piercing machine gun here, and with 2 shots shut the throat of the night machine gun. Orim Vasilchenko helped me to solve this problem. Before dawn, a liaison came running after. The battalion chief of staff is calling. After hesitating for a while, Orim and I went first to my dugout. We heard footsteps. Vasilchenko and I pressed against the wall of the trench. Soldiers from the rear were carrying breakfast. They passed close by and didn't notice us. Here it is, the power of camouflage. Strangers crowded around our dugout. All, as one, were smoking, smelled of strong smoke. "Why are you crowded here? Disperse," I commanded in a masterly tone. Only one of them was not affected by my voice. A big soldier stood in front of me with his legs wide apart. Though he was not tall enough, he was a foot tall in the shoulders. I could feel the strength in this soldier, and his character, apparently, was bully. Everybody parted, everybody heard me, but he stood like a pillar. I touched his shoulder. Without turning his head, he said, "Well, what do you want?" "Let's go to the dugout." "They don't ask me to go there." "And if they don't ask you, why are you staring at an empty shell casing?" "I'm not staring," replied the soldier. "I'm listening." "Why are you flapping your ears in vain? Gathered here and waiting for the Nazi grenades to fly. Look, the rooster is not big, but he is so wide in feathers, he is crowing. Maybe I should clip its wings so that they don't fly away from the sinful earth?" Lieutenant Fedosov came out of the dugout. Seeing me, he said, "I'm waiting for you." "In honor of what holiday is this rally here? All the posts are exposed in front of the enemy's nose. You're getting hot-headed. This is an assault group, a reserve group, so to speak. If there's any trouble, a skirmish, we'll move this group to that section at once." On the way to the battalion headquarters, the lieutenant told me about the purpose of mobile assault groups. The most desperate and strong men are selected for them. "I see," I replied. One of them was just about to clip my wings. "Don't take offense at him. He's a good armor piercer." The lieutenant reassured me. "Well, why do they call me to the battalion headquarters?" I asked. "Now you'll see. The commander told me to call you. He said to let Zaitsev see what kind of Rotasay snipers he has." In the dugout of the battalion headquarters, there was an interrogation of the prisoner, who was taken by Captain Krasnov. The big Efriat asked the captain not to shoot him, as he knew a lot and would tell everything in the headquarters, but not here. The interrogation ended, and I managed to find out details of how the prisoner was taken. The day before yesterday, Captain Krasnov learnt from the scouts about the location of the German anti-tank battery and decided to check, or more precisely, to see for himself whether the scouts were reporting correctly. The sortie was well thought out, down to the smallest detail. Taking with him 2 strong mortars. The captain put on a camouflage coat of the same colour as the Germans. Through the belt of a telephone set over his shoulder hung a German-style automatic rifle around his neck. Even the grenades dangled from the side with long handles. Apparently, the captain, a lover of thrills, this time not without risk, decided to test his fortune. He passed with his assistants in German uniform unnoticed in our section, crossed the front line, passed the mined areas on the neutral and found himself in the enemy's location. A telephone wire fell into their hands, by which the daredevils decided to sneak to the command post of the enemy battery. Soon they met a German telephonist, who began to complain that he was exhausted by gusts on the line. There was no peace neither day nor night. The battery commander looked at him like a donkey. "Now we will help you," he said Krasnov, knowing a little German. "Are you a Serb?" The telephonist was wary. "Yes, a Serb," answered Krasnov, and immediately realized that to go any further was an unjustified risk. They would identify him. I had to knock the telephonist on the back of his head, gag him with a glove and drag him back. "How did you sneak unnoticed through our section?" I asked the captain. He smiled and replied thoughtfully. "When a fisherman sees that the float of his rod jumped, a big bream is biting. This fisherman can draw devils on his back, and he won't notice. Psychological calculation. You should take this into account and don't scold your snipers in vain. Better teach them discretion." There's only one word left for me to sigh. "Thank you." Yes, in sniping you can't ignore what is called the psychology of searching for an important target. If you get carried away, you get caught up in the excitement of fighting with an insidious, cunning sniper, and you don't notice what is being done to the right, left, and behind your back. You lose your discretion. Captain Krasnov taught me a good lesson. This is something to think hard about. At dusk, we are making our way to the battery of Ilya Shuklin, a well-known tank fighter in our division who distinguished himself in the days of fighting in the Kastonia area. And the men in his battery are 1-to-1, as brave as the commander himself. We were called by an artilleryman with a machine gun in his hands, with grenades hanging from his belt. He appeared in front of us suddenly and put the muzzle of the machine gun in my chest. "Don't move, I'll blow a hole in you." I calmly withdrew the muzzle of the machine gun. "Fenof, don't be stupid. Everyone is here." "I'm checking for resistance," answered the sentry. It was my friend Vasily Fenof, who later became my pupil. Fenof whistled. From behind a block of reinforced concrete came out a soldier, replaced my friend, and we moved to the basement of the battery commander. Not far away loomed the famous factory pipe with a broken side. To it stretched telephone wires from almost all artillery regiments of the R, the main adjustment point of Stalingrad. The enemy knew about it. How many bombs, shells, mines were spent to destroy this pipe? Hundreds, thousands, but the adjustment point did not stop working. Only recently the enemy snipers appeared here, and our adjusters one by one began to go out of action. The accuracy of fire of our batteries was disturbed. The artillerymen asked for help from their commander, General Pozharsky. That's why we, snipers, ended up visiting Shuklin. For a good deed, he could grab a soldier in his arms, kiss him like a favorite girl. Now I was spinning in his clutches, and he would say, "Oh, Vasily, how could I refuse you in Krasnofimsk? You're very unattractive. And now listen to what happened. Assist snipers have pinned me down. I can't appear on the pipe. They won't let me stick my head out. I can't understand where they're shooting from. Help me out, monsieur." Upstairs the artillery boomed. But here in Shuklin's dungeon, nobody paid attention to such a trifle. Machine gun bursts and grenades were not heard at all. "Here is your room. Comrade snipers, rest, bring your weapons to readiness," said Shuklin, opening the tent door to a room with bunks for 3 people. Morozov, Shaikin and Kurikov stayed here. In the next compartment, Vasilchenko, Goroshayev, Volovatek, Draika were placed. "And you and me, Chief. Let's go to my compartment," Shuklin offered me. There came a comrade from the political department of the army, an informer interested in how you will prepare for a duel with fascist snipers. He's a Siberian shot at. We crossed the corridor, rounded a corner and found ourselves in the commander's compartment. Instead of bunks, there were soldiers' bunks along the walls and a table made of boards in the middle. On it was a cut loaf of grey bread and, one miracle, on a plate, a stack of pancakes in a homely way. At the other end of the table, in front of a 7-line lamp, staring at a notebook, sat a blond, snub-nosed man. He had a sleeper on his buttonholes. A captain or a senior political officer. I think I saw him at the crossing on the day of my arrival in Stalingrad. Then he took our sailors away from the moorings. But now my main attention was attracted by the fried, toasted pancakes. It was a luxury. I even gasped in delight. "You live well, comrade senior lieutenant," I said to Shuklin. "Can we have Siberian dumplings in your kitchen?" "You can have Siberian dumplings too, but you have to earn money first, and the artillerymen won't take care of it." Shuklin put me at the table next to him. The extermination of pancakes began. Only this blond one with a sleeper on his buttonholes seemed to have hesitated. Without taking his eyes off his notebook, he stretched out his hand to the plate, but it was already empty. He raised his eyes in surprise and met my smile. "I see that reinforcements have come to you, Comrade Shuklin. From the commander's reserve, I believe?" "Yes, eh?" I answered for Shuklin. From the reserve, from Mamayev Kurgan." The blonde didn't seem to understand my irony, smiled and extended his hand to Ivan Grigoriev. "Vasily Zaitsev." I answered, shaking his strong hand. "So what offence did Mamayev Kurgan cause to the snipers?" He asked, as if finding out the reason for our appearance here at the plant Red October. This question puzzled me. I looked intently at Grigoriev and answered. "The commander's order is the law for the soldier. This I know, but I am interested in another. What is he meddling in my soul?" For some reason I was indignant and raised my tone imperceptibly. And firstly, it is equally hot on Mamayev Kurgan and at the factory Red October. Secondly, I took a breath for a new shot, but Grigoriev disarmed me. "Don't get her a silence called me by name. Marcia, you did not understand me. It's about your mood. After all, I've been writing about you in the bulletins for a month now. Mamayev Kurgan is a key position of our defence, and I'm interested in how you feel here. I liked his assessment of the positions on Mamayev Kurgan. I felt the desire to have a heart-to-heart talk with him. We went to the wall, sat on a bench, had a cigarette, and I began to tell about what I had experienced and changed my mind during the days of fighting on the slopes of Mamayev Kurgan. Here we are crawling on Mamayev in the area of water tanks. Many people are scratched, others lie down on the spot, but I am unharmed. They say I'm lucky. The wounded are taken to hospital, and I'm lucky. I'm crawling along the trenches again. Now I've been called to the bank of the Volga. Here I gave Grigoriev a jab. I was drawn to the Volga, as if I had deserted from a dangerous area. As if it was my fault that I was not among the dead on the barrow. Grigoriev left, and I was even more heated desire, as soon as possible, to start fighting with the enemy snipers who were destroying our adjusters. During the night I managed to talk to many artillerymen, eyewitnesses to the death of the adjusters. Ilya Shuklin helped to draw several schemes, by which my snipers could understand from what points, at what angle the fire was conducted on the adjusters on the pipe, what was the trajectory, and therefore the distance of the bullet flight from the barrel channel to the top of the pipe. Calculations, drawings, even a detailed disassembly of the case of the optical device, pierced by a sniper's bullet, told me how to act tomorrow. The scheme of sniper's placement, thought out at night, turned out to be more than successful. Here, unlike the position on Mamayev Kurgan, the piles of factory ruins restricted the view. The optics kept rolling over the torn fittings, the blistered metal structures, the collapsed roofs, the skewed walls. So, in order to shoot at the observers on the pipe, it is necessary to move away to a great distance or to choose a gap in the ruins. There are no other ways. That's why we immediately began to probe the gaps to the full depth, and we were not mistaken. Sniper optics allowed us to see literally the pupils of the eyes of Hitler's soldiers. But we were in no hurry, firing only at snipers and the most dangerous machine gun points. By noon I had used up my clip. My partner Kulikov too. Morozov and Shaikin 2 magazines each. Goroshiev and Vazlichenko shot well. In the evening, to make sure of the results, I asked Shuklin to lift a dummy of an adjuster on the desperate Ilya Shuklin climbed up there himself. Of course, I couldn't hold him down, but while he was climbing up there, my throat got dry. But then Ilya shouted into the phone. Battery, 1 shell on the first rep. Fire. A minute passed. A shot rang out somewhere. Good. On the second 2 shells. Fire. That's how Ilya Shuklin spent the evening artillery dawn. In the morning of the next day, the adjusters began to send the necessary corrections to the firing positions, and only when the batteries located on the other side of the Volga started to work, I felt how tired I was. My head was buzzing, my eyes stung as if broken glass had been poured into them. I had to sleep at least an hour. So I went to the first cellar and fell asleep. I fell asleep, not suspecting that the resumption of the corrector's work would cause the enemy to become furious. I woke up from a strong blow in the shoulder. He jumped up, grabbed his rifle. Everything was buzzing around. Bricks were falling from the ceiling. Big flames were shooting along the walls. Finally, he saw a gap, jumped out of the cellar, pressed himself to the ground. Bombs were exploding on the right and left. 1 second, third, and 30 to 40 meters away from me. Explosive waves turned me from stomach to back and back again. Suddenly I found myself in a hole, probably in a bomb crater. I watched the sky. Lines of dive bombers plunged downwards almost to the ground, then with a roar soared towards the clouds. Fiery whirlwinds sweep across the ground. At last the air became quiet. Hitlerites rushed into the attack. Under the cover of bombing, they accumulated at the walls of the plant and now rushed into the breaches of the walls, into the gaps between the destroyed buildings of workshops. You can hear their shouts, commands, and as if our machine guns were waiting for this moment, they started to work amicably, frantically, without respite. Explosions of grenades slammed. By these explosions it became clear to me where were our own, it was our time. I hit at choice, without counting the shots. I aim at those in the second line, behind the backs of my soldiers. I'm hitting until my pouch is empty. The fighting didn't start to die down until late afternoon. Now I have to gather my snipers. The place of gathering is Shuklin's battery, more precisely, a pipe with a hole in it, a good landmark, visible from all sides. I'm sneaking there through the fighting orders of the 39th and 45th Divisions. Here everything is mixed up. The enemy still managed to occupy the northern part of the plant Krasny Oktyabr and come close to the bank of the Volga. Now units from the reserve are being pulled up here, especially many fighters from Bogunsky and Tereshchansky regiments of the 45th Division named after Shorsa. They should destroy Hitlerites who broke through to the Volga. At dusk we reached our own. Kulikov, Gorozayev, Shaikin and Morozov were waiting for me in the agreed place, on the platform east of the pipe. There were no Vasilchenko, Volovety, Dryka. Having bandaged each other's wounds, we went to look for them. We found them only in the morning under the bank of the Volga at the sanitary pier. Dryka, Volovatyk and Vasilchenko were here not of their own free will. They were brought here by the orderlies. Volovatyk and Vasilchenko were concussed. They couldn't stand on their feet. Dryka was vomiting badly. Swollen, with red eyes, they lay on the shore on bare stones without bidding. Several hundred wounded had piled up here during the previous day, and the orderlies had no time to look after them all. The crossing was out of order. We took our comrades and went up the Banam ravine to the location of the headquarters of our 284th Division. We were placed in 2 dugouts of the armory workshops. Nikolai Lugvinenko was the first to look in on us. He was assigned to the post of Chief of Staff of the 2nd Battalion and arrived at the regimental headquarters by order of the Chief of Staff, Captain Petersky. Soon Brigade Commissar Konstantin Terentievich Zubkov also came in here. At that time, nurses Luda Yablonskaya and Zhenya Kosova were just treating the wounded, washing off bruises. Our uniforms were torn to shreds. The commissar ordered to replace it and cut our hair with a machine. The officer of the platoon, Mikhail Babayev, brought a set of summer uniforms. Washed, trimmed, clean-shaven, we looked like conscripts in ill-fitting ammunition. On me, for example, everything was flabby. My overalls hung in a bag, my boots were 4 sizes bigger. Colonel Nikolai Filipovich Batyuk, the division commander, came. He was brought here by Zubkov. As the senior command, I reported on the completion of the task, on the losses of snipers. The commander looked at us, looked at me and laughed, roared infectiously, but it was rare. He always looked dissatisfied. Batyuk could not tolerate empty reports, so many staff workers tried to be more silent in front of him, and I, admittedly, expected from him a reprimand for something, but the commander laughed, and in the dugout became as if cozier, warmer. "Who painted you like that?" Batyuk asked, looking at the faces of the snipers. "Medical nurse Yablonskaya." "Why did she paint you like that?" For the Krauts," answered Kulikov. "Well, there's plenty of time before the wedding. Listen to your tasks. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the commander will pass by our dugouts. By that time, snipers from other divisions will come to the Bany ravine, rest till 3 o'clock. And you, Zaitsev, you look like a scarecrow in that uniform. Go to the dugout to the brigade commissar and change there." I blushed and was ready to refuse, but the commissar, with a nod of his head, made it clear. Don't go. At the entrance to the commissar's dugout stood a young soldier of small stature. He was smoking a pipe filled with golden fleece tobacco. "Tell me, dear intellectual," I addressed him, "where is the commissar's dugout?" He looked at me intently and parried. "I've been waiting for you, you garden scarecrow, for a long time. Come in." In the dugout, I was approached by a girl in a uniform over a wide officer's belt with a small holster hanging on it. She extended her hand to me. "Leader." "Vasily Zaitsev." I answered, and immediately she poured questions into. "Is it true what they say in the newspapers that you duelled with a fascist sniper used a mirror? I wonder who lent it to you. How do I know? Because our brigade commissar collects newspaper clippings about your cases, and the man responsible for it is Alyosha Afanasyev." My guide smiled. "You'll excuse me," he said. "I didn't know you by sight. I thought some agitator had come, so I took you to the commissar's dugout. He's having a meeting today. Are you really Zaitsev?" I took out my Komsomol ticket and handed it to Alyosha. "That's great," he exclaimed. "There will be a good article. Vasily Zaitsev visiting Brigade Commissar Zubkov." Zubkov appeared. He smiled and said, "Don't be happy, Alyosha. There won't be such an article in the paper." "There will be an article. Snipers of the 284th Rifle Division at a conversation with the commander of the 62nd Army, Lieutenant General Chuikov." He walked to a corner, pulled out a leather briefcase. took out a general notebook and said to, sit closer. Let's have a conversation, because we don't have much time. Yes, about what, Comrade Brigade Commissar? I asked. Tell me your biography. Zaitsev Vasily Grigorievich was born in 1915 in the forest, in the Urals. The commissar interrupted. Wait a minute, Vasily. What do you mean? Born in the forest, probably in a village somewhere. Otherwise you think I was born in a wood, under a tree stump? No, Comrade Brigade Commissar, I was born in the woods, in a forester's bathhouse, during Holy Week. On the second day of my birth, my mother saw that I had 2 teeth. A bad omen, I was to be torn by beasts of prey. My father fought in the Imperialist War, served as a soldier in the 8th Guards Brusilov Army. He returned home as an invalid in 1917. As a child, I was nicknamed Baserman. I had nowhere to study. My grandfather taught me to be a tracker, a hunter. I was good at shooting, could set loops on hare trails, used snares to catch orcas, covered grouse with a tent, threw a harness over the horns of wild goats from a tree. Unnoticeably, I was carried away by memories, and again it turned out to be a confession. Lieutenant Colonel Vasily Zakharovich Tkachenko, head of the political department, appeared at the door. Brigade Commissar slammed the notebook. Well, Vasily, we'll continue next time, and now go and change your clothes. Alyosha and Lida were waiting for me in the next compartment. On the bunks there was a pile of clean uniforms and even a new pilot's cap, and on the pilot's cap, a handkerchief. There was a pair of worn but good boots. Change your clothes and then we'll go to dinner, said Lida and left. I looked at the things in surprise. The uniform fit me as if by order. It turned out that it belonged to Brigade Commissar Zubkov, only the belt lacked holes. From a trench soldier I turned into a foppe. That's what Lida called me at dinner. At 3 o'clock in the morning, snipers of our regiments gathered in the dugout of the division commander. Grigoriev was already here. Vasily Ivanovich Chukov appeared. He greeted everyone by the hand, then, smiling, said, "Yes, how beautiful you all are, patched up with stickers. You must have been scratched badly." "What to do with them, Comrade Commander? These patches do not prevent us from beating the fascists." I answered for everyone. "We are ready to fulfill any task." "Thank you, said Chuikov. "And for one beaten man, they give 2 unbeaten men. You fight well, you beat the fascists well. But, despite this, the enemy managed to capture the northwestern part of the plant Red October. There's a hot fight going on there. You snipers can be very useful. I know that 3 of your comrades are lying." Chuikov looked at Grigoriev. "You were seized by excitement and you, as they say, lost their sniper face, turned into machine gunners. In ordinary soldiers, you should be scolded for that, scolded hard. You, Vasily Zaitsev, are in special demand. You must value every sniper of your group." Chuikov looked at his watch. Apparently, the time was driving him. He stood up, handed Grigoriev a notebook, on the pages of which was written down my confession. "I will not bore you with general talk. We have specific tasks before us. To beat the enemy for sure and without a miss. For every mistake, we pay with blood. So let each of you think, report to your conscience, talk to it in a big way. And then it will become clear how to act in such an environment. Conscience is a strict and fair judge. I wish you success." Then Vasily Ivanovich left the dugout. I was left alone with my thoughts. Thought about different things. The Battle of Stalingrad gave me a lot. I had grown up and matured. I felt myself no longer the soldier I was a month or 2 ago.